It's a bunch of crazy stories written by the Brothers Grimm. And now you're gonna learn all about them, listening to the Brothers Grimm.
Students and scholars, friends and relations, welcome to the Brothers Grimm podcast, a merry sort of podcast in which we look at the happy stories curated and written down by the Brothers Grimm in the early 1800s in the land which we called Germany, but which the Germans called Deutschland, which you'd think that's where Dutch people come from, but no, those people come from the Netherlands. Though they did speak what they call Dutch, but just means popular in Middle German, or if you like fantasy and sci-fi, what everyone says, he spoke common. And we call it Germany and the language German because that's what the land was called by the Romans.
Yes, the Germanic.
Yes.
There will be a quiz at the end.
There's history in all of this. We're an educational program, we are.
Oh, shit, I have to update the tags.
Yeah, update the tags to educational. We certainly... It's something. All of that said, maybe why the Brothers Grimm decided that maybe it was time to write some of this down, get a hold on their own language and their own folklore, including this week's tale, story number 83, Hans in Luck. My name is Phil.
And my name is Mike.
Mike, how are you now?
I'm doing pretty well this week. How about yourself?
I've been thinking about things, as you become a parent, you start thinking about the greater truths.
Yes, sort of,
and
sometimes.
Such, and thinking about your own life. And I think I have lived a charmed life.
Yeah, I'd say, yeah.
Lucky, one might say, if they were so inclined.
Yeah, I've definitely had many instances of being in the right place at the right time.
Okay, so you do feel lucky. Punk.
I do.
Well and good.
I do.
Punk. That ties into something a little bit later, but okay, well and good. Do you have a grade for Hans in Luck?
I went straight up flat A.
Oh wow. Okay.
I enjoyed this one.
All righty.
It's nothing flashy, but it tickled me.
Okay.
Maybe it just got me at the right time. I'm curious about you though.
I gave it a C. I thought it was fine.
Okay.
Not even bad. Like I was just like, this is average. I thought it was a little bit longer than it needed to be to get the point across. And I'm not even 100% sure what that point was.
Interesting. Okay.
But I digress. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on it after we get through it. And maybe we can agree on a on an average of a B.
Yeah, we'll see.
Okay. Without further ado then, and if you don't mind, I will take us through the plot of Grimm story number 83, Hans in Luck.
Yes.
Once upon a time, there was a fella named Hans, and Hans finished up his last day of 7 years' work. He says, "Boss, it's about time you paid me, and then I shall go home to my mother." And the boss says, "You know what? Fair play to you. Here's a lump of gold the size of your head, worth 7 years of wages. So off you go." And just for fun, by the way, I did some quick calculations. This lump of gold would be about 200 pounds.
200 weight pounds.
200 weight pounds.
Not British pounds.
Not British pounds. No, this is 200 actual pounds, which, depending on your head size, which is a very heavy lump. So
yeah, that's pretty heavy.
So that's just some context for everybody. Off Hans goes. He's having trouble lugging the 200-pound lump of gold around, understandably. And as he's walking to his mother, he sees a guy on a horse, and he says, "Oh man, riding a horse seems a lot better than walking." And the guy on the horse hears this, and he says, "Well, I'll tell you what, young man, you trade me that 200-pound lump of gold, and I will give you this horse." And Hans happily agrees. And then we do that over and over and over again. So first he has trouble with the horse. It's all wild, and he doesn't know how to ride it. He gets bucked off, and then he's mad, and then he trades that for a cow, tries to milk it. The cow is old and has no milk. And when he tries to get milk, the cow kicks him in the head. So then he trades the cow for a pig for a goose, finally trades the goose for a rock, which a guy had been sharpening scissors on, and says, "Here, if you buy this here sharpening stone, and I'll throw in this other heavy rock, which you can use to straighten nails."
Which I just found on the ground next to me.
Yeah,
literally.
I've just found this rock. I'll throw this one into. You will have yourself a fine career. So Hans, he happily agrees. He starts on home, but he's thirsty, so he stops at a well in the middle of a field. And I, for sure, thought Hans was going to fall into that well and die, but no. No, he just accidentally drops his rocks in the well. And then, free of all of his burdens, he ran happily home to his mom. The end. Mike, do you have a moral for this tale?
The best I have is find joy in whatever your situation.
Okay.
But it's a complicated tale. So I'm curious what your moral is.
I guess money doesn't buy happiness necessarily.
Especially not if it weighs 200 pounds and you're carrying it in a handkerchief over your shoulder.
It's not that's not very fungible money. Well, I guess the one guy took the lump sum, as it were, for the horse.
Yeah, like a bag of coins would have been at least more malleable.
Yeah, then you can. Well, I'll trade one coin for the horse. But
Yeah.
he didn't. Yeah, no, not what happened.
We cannot make change.
Yeah, I think that too. Like, I mean, the purpose was class, I guess. So Hans starts off educated, right?
Mhm.
He's done a 7-year internship. So whatever education counted for in the 1800s, whatever he was doing, he knows how to do now.
Yeah.
And 7 years that's the time, right?
I mean, those days you had a short life expectancy, so that's about your working age, and then you retire and you go die.
Well, I thought that was
Basically.
also the 7-year thing was, and this might be totally.
I'm kidding.
Apocryphal. No, I know you're kidding, but like the reason we're age 21 is the adult age, right? Is that like if you were trying to become a knight, your first 7 years learning how to, I don't know, tie shoes together, whatever you do, but then 7 to 14. You're like learning how to squire a little bit.
Mhm.
14 to 21, it's another. You're learning the better skills, sharpening the not swords or whatever it is. Learning how to put on the armor, the harder skills, and then after that, you're a knight.
Interesting. I don't know
But
if I want a 7-year-old squire. I've
if
never
you're a
heard
knight,
this 7-year thing.
Yeah, and I don't know how accurate it is. I think I read that somewhere, and I mean, obviously, the
it sounds
7-year-old's gonna do. Yeah, the 7-year-old's gonna do different stuff, right?
Yeah.
So, anyways, after his apprentice, he's also very rich, and he walks downward through these classes of people. So, quite wealthy. That's the aristocracy. Then he becomes someone who owns a horse. He's not just educated and wealthy, but he owns a horse, which again, you still need to be rich to do. The horses are a luxury. They just provide transportation, which is valuable, but not.
Yeah. That's a good point. Actually, with the way the people are represented, I believe the guy riding the horse is intended to be sort of the more wealthy or cultured, not just a little shy of aristocracy.
Exactly. And then they're going downwards. Like, so the cow, the pig, goose, down to the scissor grinder, which is a job we've not seen before. Yeah. But presumably
a farmer, a butcher, a kid, and a scissor.
Yeah. And
then a woodcutter.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's the thing. Yeah. So like he's low skilled. He's a bit low skilled as a worker, and you don't need that much to start. You just need a rock. And rocks are goddamn everywhere.
Yep.
The whole earth is made of rock. So
but you can trade for them.
Yeah, if you find someone stupid enough. And each level, though, comes with its own burdens. So heavy is the crown and all. Again, I didn't know what the purpose of all that was. So okay, we've walked now down through this. There might be a religious vibe to it, like cast off your worldly possessions. Like Matthew has the quote, "You can't serve two masters. You can either worship money, as it were, or worship God, but you can't do both." And it's also like Buddhism. That's like the major theme of Buddhism, I think, right? The renunciation.
Yeah, and that's what I took away from this.
Okay.
I think my first reading was, this is your typical grim fool. It's like the frog in the pot of water, the spoiling. Like he doesn't realize that each trade is incrementally worse. But at the beginning, would he have traded the 200 pounds of gold for 2 rocks? Probably not. But he makes these incremental trades, and like that's the joke. He's stepping down each time, but doesn't realize it. But what got me is that he finds joy in each of these. Every step of the way, he's found joy in the choice that he made or the situation he found himself in. And so my question is he a fool, or is he ultimately wise beyond knowing? Is he like Buddha, where he's discovered that ridding yourself of these trappings, these burdens, is ultimately the path to enlightenment?
Yeah, abandoning attachments to material things to pursue spiritual.
Right.
That was
but at the same time,
he's treasure the whole time.
Yeah, but he's not doing it intentionally either. He's each situation. It's like, oh, I don't like this horse because it threw me. I don't like this cow because it kicked me in the head. Yeah. I don't like this gold because it's heavy. So, I don't like this pig because the mayor might think I stole it from him.
Touching a little bit of Taoism, then just or even with Buddhism, it's like he's so woke.
Yeah,
and he's natural at it. He doesn't even need to read the book.
Yeah.
About Buddhist enlightenment. Yeah, I know it makes for a really good Buddhist parable. I can't imagine that's what Grimoire's going for.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's why I'm like, yeah, that's my read of it, but yeah, I don't think that was the intent.
You mentioned the trading thing was kind of interesting too. I don't know here for us, and I don't know from whence our listeners come, but So I don't know if this is worldwide, but we do have the opposite story, which was like kind of a modern day, not a legend exactly, almost a folktale, even though it was real. Like the art of the trade. You remember that?
No, I don't think so.
So this Canadian fella by the name of Kyle McDonald started out with the red paper clip.
Oh.
And made a series of trades until he eventually had a house.
Yep.
Which was also, I think it was parodied on an episode of The Office.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, like Dwight goes over. They have a swap meet at the work.
I do. Yeah, I do recall this. I didn't know it as the art of the trade.
Yeah, I think that was what like he ended up calling it, because it was sort of did get a house, though it took him like a year, and that was the blog. That was is him going and doing these trades, and each big trade was like a big update on the blog, and
yeah,
and the journey went viral enough that like as he's doing these things, like radio DJs were making trades with him so that he would go on the show, and then it would be like a big thing. And so like one of the trades was for like a recording contract from a Canadian metal music label. Like it was a bunch of people being like kind of silly and kind of zeitgeisty, right? Like it was fun to offer this guy, because then what if and then of course he traded it to a metal band that then had a contract, which I'm sure was favorable,
that ended well.
Favorable to the label. But still, he kept trading up. So back to these.
It's funny you mentioned that, because I was going to mention, it reminds me of, I know I've mentioned Destination Imagination before. In the past few years, we've gone to global finals in Kansas City. And it's this magical thing where we take over the conference center and the 2 or 3 hotels. Basically, you can't walk down the street without running into DI people. And so there's this one kid on my older kids team. He's sort of like the soul of the team. He's very personable. Mm-hmm. Just like that kid who's going to ask you to borrow your hat as just like walking past you on the street. So anyway, like he always plays bigger or better over these like 4 or 5 days in KC, where he starts with a piece of pocket lint or a fortune cookie or something like that. And he'll just like approach anyone on the street. And, most of the time it's somebody from DI, but a lot of the times it's just a local who's on their way to work. And he's like, bigger or better. And they're like, what? Do you want to trade me anything for this that's either bigger or better? And so he goes the whole weekend and sees how far he can get.
That's very funny. And bigger, just specifically size?
Specifically size, or something that person would consider to be better.
Okay. Now, does the kid get to choose what is better?
I don't know the specific rules.
Okay. Well, it sounds fun.
Usually when we're out walking on the sidewalk, I'm just like, stop bothering strangers.
Yeah.
But he's having fun.
Well, that's the important thing.
Yeah. This is like smaller or worse.
Bring that back to the story, though, then, to this, then. Something I found interesting, too, is that he kept getting hurt. And the further up the social ladder he was, the worse he got hurt.
Yeah. The first several, especially, were just like, physical pain.
He's just in constant pain as he's walking, because he's so weighed down with an unwieldy 200-pound weight. And then he's bucked off the horse. Then he's kicked in the face by a cow.
Which does not feel good.
And then it's all just in his head. So like come the pig, he thinks he's gonna get hurt.
Yep.
So he swaps it for the goose, which really doesn't do him no harm, really. But at that point, because what's a goose gonna do? But again, then nor do the grinder rocks exactly. But by the time he's at that low levels, there's no real way to get hurt, because there's no.
I don't know, man. Geese can fuck you up.
Oh, that's if they're big enough. Yeah, I guess I don't know what but
yeah,
yeah. There's less things you have, so it's like a man that has nothing is the.
It's one thing that I thought was interesting is each of the times he steps down, it's generally reactive, because like the horse bucked me, the cow kicked me, the mayor's gonna think I stole this pig, and then he's got the goose and he trades it for the grinding stones, because the sharpener has convinced him that with grinding stones he'll be a blade grinder. And that's a profession, and anytime you stick your hand in your pocket, you'll have coins. It deviates from all the other decisions in that it's not reactive from something negative. It's a turn towards something positive.
Okay.
But it's also a turn towards an attempt at material wealth, too, which is what he eschewed in the beginning. Or not eschewed, but gave up in the beginning.
And material wealth, which he immediately loses.
Right.
Trying to get a drink of water.
But they're so goddamn heavy.
Oh, these rocks. I'm back where I started, except I'm poor this time. It's the same goddamn thing.
I've started, but they're not shiny.
Yeah. Anyways, okay, let's see here. Arn Thompson, type 415, trading away one's fortune. Not a lot of examples, except for Hans and Luck, which a lot of Europeans seem to know offhand, but which I didn't really know this story. But this seems to be, there was a lot of people who were like, oh yeah, everyone knows Hans and Luck.
Yeah, I saw there's lots of documented variants. Norway, Russia. I think there was England.
Okay.
Actually, I think there was like an Appalachian one as well that was called out.
Anything worthwhile, or does that get
I didn't find the actual stories, but I found a reference to there's a version of it in the 50s. Somebody compiled a book of like folk tales from the Ozarks.
Okay.
Which, having watched the show Ozark and having listened to Old Gods of Appalachia, which is like Appalachian horror, I would love to get my hands on.
Ozarks are like, they're down south, right? They're just a bunch of lakes.
Yeah, it's like Missouri.
It's like up in the mountains, but it's like all lakes, or is it?
Honestly, all I know is from the show Ozark.
Okay.
Which, to be fair, is more than I knew before I watched the show Ozark. But
okay, I guess I don't know much about the Ozarks.
Yeah, I think it's mostly Missouri.
Okay. By the way, I did a little digging on the name Hans.
Yeah.
If you're curious, yes, because I started noticing. I know last week we were talking about Hansel. Right, Hansel and Gretel. There just seemed to be a lot of Hansels and Hanses all around. And then also, I think we've got another couple coming up. But
yeah, I think so.
So I was curious. I said, and so Hans or Hansel? I said, wait, is this like the third Wilhelm brother? They're like, oh, no, it's short for the name Johannes.
Oh,
which is the German variation of, I think, Janana. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but roughly translate as God is gracious. Bit of a double meaning in that it's somewhat holy, but it seems to be in Germany, like in the US, we have the jokes that star Little Johnny.
Vaguely, yeah.
Okay, so it involves Little Johnny misunderstanding something about sex, although it needs something like a stupid setup. So
right,
Little Johnny's teacher asks the class, "What's something you should never put in your mouth?" And Little Johnny says, "A lit light bulb." And the teacher says, "Well, sure, but why do you say that though?" And Little Johnny says, "I don't know, but every night when my parents are going to bed, I hear my mom say, 'Turn off the light before you put it in my mouth.'" and then presumably this would greatly embarrass the teacher. But that's how German, that's Hansel is that's the go-to name, because it's funny because it means God is gracious.
Elliot's going to love that one when they hear this.
Okay, yeah, he's going to like
just so you know,
the Little Johnny joke. Well, there's about 1,000 of them.
Slightly ribald.
A little bit ribald. I was wondering, Mike, do you have a big Hollywood pitch for me?
I do.
Okay.
Sort of.
Okay. I didn't really have one last week either. It just was like this, but on Adult Swim. By all means, sir, I would love to hear what you got to say.
Mike Judge meets Ayn Rand.
So, Act 1. There's a guy.
Okay.
Anyway, so he opts to eschew worldly possessions and live a simple life.
Sure.
Not that uncommon. So we follow him as he wanders the world. He's sharing meals and casting off his things as he goes. We see some of the recipients of the things that he had. You know, some of them are more fortunate, and thus they can be seen as kind of taking advantage, but more often it's the less fortunate, and this gift truly impacts them, right?
Okay.
He's a very friendly and charismatic person, kind of like in a Jesus way. So he kind of gains, not followers, but like he becomes kind of like Instagram famous as people sort of like taking pictures with him or of him, and
okay,
you know, like a Humans of New York kind of thing. He becomes this sort of beatific figure, demonstrating this way to live simply. He's not preaching it; he's just kind of doing his thing, and people are like, "Oh yeah, no, I ran into the possessions guy." So it becomes like this movement, right? It starts as sort of trendy among the elite. They're looking for something new, so they start donating their things off, their money. Often it's just for like the social clout, but sometimes it's really for this true understanding of it. And so like there's this wave, the lesser fortunate, sort of like the lower classes start to get these things. They now live a little more materially blessed. They're enjoying a newfound sense of comfort and security where they didn't necessarily have that before. As time goes on, it starts to begin to wear on them too. So this wave keeps going down the social classes and down the castes. And, you know, before long, the poorest of the poor, they've inherited the bulk of the world's material goods and money. At this point, society has begun to shift. The ironic point is that, like, by the time it gets down to like the poorest of the poor, these things no longer necessarily have any worth. Like currency is devalued. Humankind is sort of in this new age of understanding and living. There's this age of peace and tranquility. They get to revel in it for a little bit, but basically what we're getting at to the end of Act 1 is that all of humankind is united in this sort of living in this harmonic kind of state, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Act 2, the poorest of the poor, they've been drowning in possessions and now devaluated currency. What is there to do with all these things? So we start dumping grounds for all these things. You know, picture like the Grand Canyon full of gold-plated
Opulent
toilets
things.
and opulent crap. And this becomes an eyesore, obviously.
Yeah.
The oceans are vast. They're kind of self-regulating, right? So we'll dump all this shit in the ocean. This will be gone in like 100 years. It's just going to break down. Well, 100 years comes and goes, not breaking down. There are huge swaths of ocean infected, and we already see this now with plastics. Like, it's coated with massive rafts of discarded possessions and crap. Okay. Marine life has been severely affected. Species are suffering and dying out. One upside is that the reduction in this smooth ocean surface, it's caused a drop in sunlight being reflected back into the troposphere. We've actually kind of solved the climate crisis that we had for a couple centuries.
Okay. What year are we in at this point?
Oh, I don't know. So during this time, there's been a renaissance in scientific thought and progress. Even though we're living simpler lives, it doesn't mean we're living dumber lives. Breakthroughs in chemistry and physics, and for one thing, it's not difficult or even uncommon to reach the frontiers of space now. So somebody says, all right, let's get all this shit out of the ocean and just send it out into space. The space is a much bigger ocean.
Mm-hmm.
We don't need to see it. We don't need to deal with it. So we start doing that. We've got crap floating all through all through the solar system, at least. A lot of that just collects around Earth as this orbiting, and we already see this already, space junk of, satellites and Elon Musk's Tesla Roadster and all that shit. Before long, we have this cocoon around the planet. And we're actually blocking out enough sun that we're going to start to hit another ice age if we don't fix this.
Okay.
So that's the end of Act 2. Clock is ticking. We got to fix this. And then I was like, I wanted to do some kind of like alien show, aliens show up, and the fact that we dumped all our shit into space keeps them from getting to us, or we get to the point where science has progressed enough that we can start to bring these things back to Earth and start breaking them down into their original components. Plastics, we can turn back into hydrocarbons. Alloys, we can turn back into their base metals, reclaim silicon, lithium, and all this crap, and sort of kind of reset all the shit that was built and manufactured and made and needed. Mm-hmm. And sort of it all kind of goes back into where it started.
Okay.
Not a very compelling movie, though.
Do you know who Sir Thomas More was?
The name rings a bell, and I couldn't tell you why.
So he's this famous, kind of English Catholic guy. Mm-hmm. I think, actually, he worked with Henry VIII until Henry VIII got sick of being a Catholic. But he wrote a book called Utopia, which is where we get the word from. And Utopia was his ideal. Here's an ideal country.
Yeah.
And how everyone would act in this country. And I think you could get something kind of interesting. Here's the way we should go. This kind of modern Buddhism, or this modern thing, and here's why we should get rid of all of our possessions and stuff, because you will be more popular, and you will be famous if you do, and that's all anyone wants anymore. And just kind of working that, it'd be a weird philosophical text.
That's kind of that's the direction I was going. It was like a what if kind of thing. It doesn't explain why the people at the top are still at the top if they don't have these material possessions, because that's sort of what defines you as the top.
Interesting take. Could go anywhere. Philosophical text, maybe, or the next Mike Judge film. You decide. Or maybe Mike Judge would decide. But, okay, I don't have anything else. Do you have anything else?
Nay, I do not.
Well, if you don't have anything else and I don't have anything else, I think we can call it on Grimm story number 83, Hans in Luck. Until the next time in the next tale, may you dream sweet dreams of today's sponsor, being bad at trade. Sleep tight, and we will see you next time.
See you next time. The Brothers Dim podcast is written by the Brothers Dim. Recording engineering is done by Mike, and sound editing and mastering by Phil. Brothers Dim podcasts are copyrighted by the Brothers Dim and available at brothersdim.com, on Blue Sky at Brothers Dim, and wherever you get your podcasts.